Well, considering it's nearly 2 o'clock, I think it's best that we'll start, and anybody else that joins the call, that'll work fine. First of all, I'm Jack, and Neil's asked me to host this afternoon. So this is Amros Promotions Worcestershire Business Lunch and Club, or the closest we can get to it. This is a virtual lunch. So first of all, thanks for everybody for joining. This is, as we say, it's the closest we'll get to a lunch, considering we can't have mass gatherings and we don't know when that will be. Today's sponsor of the virtual lunch is Hayward, Wright Accountancy Group, so thank you to them. We have 3 speakers, which we'll go into. What we would encourage in the chat function, there will be an opportunity for question and answers. So please feel free to submit a question. Please explain. We'll know who you are, but if you could make us aware of the company and the question and who you want it to be asked to, that would be useful. We'll do that at the end. And there is actually a free prize draw for the best question, which will be selected by Mr. Bettridge, which was kindly sponsored by Bottles of Worcester. So we have 3 speakers this afternoon, and that is, we have Alistair Hayward Wright from the sponsors, Hayward Wright Accountancy Group. We then will hear from Michael Doolin from Clover HR, and then finally we'll wrap up with Chris Pennell of Worcester Rugby Club, Worcester Warriors. So first of all, if I could introduce Alistair to talk about current situation that everybody's in, and also the work that Hayward Wright Accountancy Group has been up to recently.
Brilliant, cheers, Jack. Yeah, so I'm just keen to just really have a bit of a catch up on the current support that's around at the moment. Can I just check, Jack? Can you see that?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, really, I just wanted to give people an overview of the financial support that's been put around at the moment, and just make sure everyone's aware of everything and are claiming what they're entitled to, really. So, as I say, the first batch of support that came around was the support for business rates. So there's a couple of grants knocking around. There's a £10,000 grant, and we've already seen these paying out. In fact, the first lot of £10,000 landed with a client of mine on the 1st of April. When they rang me up and told me about it, I thought it was an April Fool, to be honest. But yeah, genuinely was there in the bank. Any business, even if they're not paying, but if they're in that lower rate band where they don't actually pay any, they're still entitled to this grant. There's a £25,000 grant as well for those in the leisure and hospitality sectors. When I was chatting to someone from Redditch Council only last week, Redditch Council alone had been given £14 million to support this, and they'd only actually been able to give away 7 million of that. So there's a further £7 million sat there that they're trying to give away. So again, it's just raising that awareness and making sure people are aware and know that they can claim for what they can claim for. Probably the highest profile, and certainly the one that's kept me and our team incredibly busy at the moment, is the furlough support. So this is the support for those staff that businesses have had to stop working, but rather than laying them off, there's an 80% funding to encourage businesses to keep them on their payrolls and to support that. There's been some really quite complicated calculations around this. The system for claiming the money is working really, really well, to be honest, better than I probably expected it to. One of the things we found is that, as I say, some of the calculations are particularly complicated, particularly around the employer's national insurance that you can claim as well. So again, if you're in that situation, and you know people in that situation, come and seek advice because you may well be underclaiming what you could potentially claim. Small businesses are also able to reclaim statutory sick pay for any employees that they're having to self-isolate because of the virus. Very similar to the furlough grants, there is grants available or will be available for people who are self-employed And again, it's following the same steps as the furlough, where potentially 80% of your earnings over the last average earnings over the last 3 years is claimable back from the government. Latest guidance we have is that invitations to apply for this will be coming out in mid-May for those that are entitled to it, and we don't really know what's going to be involved in that claim. We suspect the claim will be very, very straightforward, because largely the revenue already have all the information that they need to be able to make those grant payments. Moving on, people may or may not be aware, but V8e payments. So if a business has got a V8e payment that they are due to make before the end of June, those have been deferred and haven't actually got to be paid now until March of 2021. So we're advising some clients to keep the cash around them at the moment, but bear in mind that obviously those payments have got to be made at some point and make provision for them. Also under that section, any self-assessment payments on account that are due at the end of July have automatically been deferred to the end of January. So those payments haven't got to be made until the 31st of January. There's no application for that. Similarly with the VAT, no application to make it. It's just the default position now. But again, we're just encouraging clients to remember that the payment's not going away, it is purely delaying it. Probably the final section on this one is around the loans. Again, there's been a lot of press around this. So the government-backed or government-secured loans available. I think one of the questions I've been asked is about what we've seen with this and how successful this has been. It's been hard work. We've managed to get a couple of loans through with the high street banks, but it's certainly, the process has been quite challenging, and you've got to present quite a lot of information to the banks. And there's been a lot of press around maybe these loans need to be a little bit easier for small businesses to access. So off the back of that, there's a further loan coming, the bounce back loan, which will be fully guaranteed by the government. That's becoming open for application, should I say, on Monday. We're being told that it'll be a very, very straightforward application, but we'll wait and see for that at the moment. I am quite encouraged, I must admit, because I think because of the challenges they've had with some of the other loans, I think they're going to be forced to make that fairly easy and fairly straightforward. But, you know, if people want to look at those and want to have a chat about those, I'm more than happy to do that at any time. And that really, as I say, kind of gives you an overview of what's been presented and what's been out there to support businesses. And I think the government have probably gone a lot further than I expected them to with some of this stuff. And it's just making sure that business owners know what's there and know what they're potentially entitled to. Because as I say, I think there's been a smaller uptake on some areas than possibly was expected. And again, that may just be lack of understanding of what people are available to them. So as I say, I'm more than happy to take questions and point people in the right direction if appropriate for any of those. I think I've been kindly given some questions. I'm going to go through them in a particular order. So first one was from Gareth, talking about furlough and directives. This was an area that when the furlough scheme was first announced, we kind of immediately thought, well, how does this apply to directors of small businesses? Directors can furlough themselves. Essentially means that they can't work. And in the early days, there was a lot of talk about, well, there's an element of directors that they have a duty to their business to continue to do certain things, and that's kind of where the line's been drawn a little bit. The guidance we've got is generally that if a director furloughs himself or herself, they can't do any fee earning work, as it were, on the business, and all they can do is fulfil their statutory duties as directors. So again, we're just working with clients to make sure they're aware of that, and that that they're treading carefully around that, because I think potentially that could be an area that could be challenged in the future. I think my second question came from Neil, and he's asking about, is there any support out there for hospitality businesses, particularly those that don't have premises, and are not entitled to those business rates? I think the only thing we can point to is obviously the furloughing of staff and those loans. And I think potentially the loans that are coming, the bounce back loans that are coming on Monday, could potentially be of interest. They do seem to be quite an attractive proposition potentially. But largely, we have had a lot of clients kind of saying to us that if you don't have premises, there seems to be a lack of support, and it has been one of the areas that maybe has been sidelined a little bit. I think my penultimate question at this point was from Paul Wallace, around what's been what was the biggest challenge across the client base. And this was an interesting one. I gave a fair bit of thought to this. It's been an interesting 6-7 weeks or so, and certainly initially when this all first started, there was a lot of doom and gloom within the clients. Understandably so, because it was a big challenge, and we didn't really know what was going to come from it. So clients were just kind of generally worrying. But actually, when you take a step back and work through the process and work through the support that's there, the last few weeks have been a lot more encouraging. We're having a lot more positive conversations with clients, where clients have sort of got on board a little bit with accepting the position we're in, and actually looking for opportunities with it, which has been obviously a lot more encouraging. My final question was from Mike Wilson at JPM Group, and I must read this as he's put it. So Mike asked, what are the forward economic implications resulting from COVID-19 related government borrowing on top of the aggressive 2020 budget? Must thank Mike for this question. And I think the honest answer is, we don't know. It's a bit of a crystal ball thing, but certainly the spending has been, as I said, far beyond what I expected. And I think the one thing we can unfortunately all guarantee is that we're going to be paying for this for some time. But I think the positives I take out of that is that we're going to be in a very different world when we come out of this. And I think there will be some massive positives, and there's going to be some great success stories coming out of this. Failing that, my suggestion would be that we look to put a tax on insurance brokers in particular. And I think that's all the questions from me. As Jack says in the chat box, I think we're doing a Q&A at the end. More than happy to take questions in there as well. That's
great, thank you, Alistair.
Cheers, Jack.
We will move on to our second guest of this afternoon, which is Michael Doolin of Clover HR. So over to you, Michael.
I'm over my allotted time, so don't hold back. Good afternoon, everybody. I run a business called Clover HR. We're a fully outsourced HR advice, guidance, recruitment, training, coaching, HR services business. We're employing 15 people. I guess when I reflected, when Neil was talking to me about the opportunity to talk today, I mentioned to him that there were 3 periods in my career over 30 odd years now where it has been manically busy and acutely, insanely busy for short bursts of time. And they typically have revolved around the financial crises and financial recessions, where I was assisting, advising, guiding business through massive periods of change, typically involving pay reductions, job reductions, reduced working weeks, etc. And that was pretty bad. This probably has been the worst, however, in my career, because not only am I doing that and the team are doing that, but we're also talking about businesses severely disrupted by the crisis. People not only losing jobs, but facing reduced working weeks, but potentially not going home to see relatives or their loved ones in a good position. So there's been a whole horrible cocktail of emotion in the business world from our lens in the last 4 weeks, and it's been acute and been unprecedented and something I would not wish to repeat. There have been myriads of issues around furlough pay, and Alice has referred to some of that. There have been myriad of issues around how do we ensure we can cope with the current crises around no work, loss of work, people not attending. And we've been dealing with lots of people in pretty difficult situations. What I think we're not doing enough of, and this is really what I wanted to talk about very briefly, is we are going to be coming out of this at some stage, and we don't really know when. But for me, business owners have got to ask themselves some fundamental questions, and those questions are, revolve around what lessons do we learn from lockdown? What can we actually take away from this that makes us stronger, leaner, fitter for the future? So, as a business owner, ask yourself the following questions: are the terms and conditions of employment that I use and utilize across my business, are they actually fit for purpose? Why do I have them? And what value are they adding to the effective running and management of my business? And why can't I change them? In the same way, the people that I employ, very much like the trenches in World War I, the people that you have seen in the last few weeks that have responded positively and constructively within your business, the people you've relied upon, the people that have been there, have been resilient, are they people that you want to look after in the future? Where were the other people that weren't there? In other words, have you got the right people in your business? And why are you putting up with people who have not added value and certainly weren't there for you during lockdown? What conversations are you having with yourself and with them to ensure that you don't get yourself in those situations going forward? Because one thing's for sure, the answers of yesteryear are not going to be the answers for tomorrow. And we have to ensure that you have, as a business owner, the right people in place. In the same way, is there any development activity? Are there any coaching activities? Are there any training plans that need to be put in place that haven't been in place before? How well are you managing your people? I used to work with a regional manager back in the day in my distribution life. He used to say to me, Michael, we're not Thomas Cook. This was in the day Thomas Cook was there. But we're not Thomas Cook. We don't carry passengers. And how many passengers do you carry in your business? And why are you carrying them? Questions like that we're beginning to address across our client base. And certainly if any of that tickles any interest with you or with any of the people that you network with, please do reach out to me and feel free to have a conversation. But what I want to leave you with is we don't have to put up with, as business owners, the way in which business has been run. It's time for change, and I think the HR community can act as a catalyst for that change within your business. I'll pass you back to Jake.
Thank you, Michael. We'll now pass over to our sort of final speaker this afternoon, which is Chris Pennell of Worcester Warriors, to talk to us about what life has been like as a professional rugby player during sort of this lockdown period.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on, Neil and Jack. So yeah, just to sort of give a bit of an outline really as to what's been going on in my world, and I'm not going to sort of disclose anything that hasn't already been put in the media, but I just chat through a bit of a timeline from where we've been, coming up 7 weeks ago when I was in the rugby club getting ready to play Gloucester, and then obviously things sort of changed very quickly, as they have for everyone here, I'm sure. I think the initial emotions were sort of relatively excited in a way to get home and get some of these DIY jobs done that have been piling up for months. But I guess the long-term implications kind of hammered home quite quickly, because we could obviously see the impact that the virus was having elsewhere, the impact it was going to have on or had already had on other sports. And once the fixtures started getting postponed, obviously the Prem Rugby board, the owners of the clubs had been very sort of fast to announce wage cuts, which obviously are very much expected when you're dealing with businesses that ultimately rely on match day revenue, and at Sixways obviously the conferencing and events side of things. These things were always going to happen, but the speed in which they were happening was so quick that it caught a lot of people off guard. And I'll be honest, I'm not the most simple of rugby players out there, but I'm also not the most intelligent. And when we're being sent information around the legal impact of what this is, we're very lucky that we have player representation with the Rugby Players Association, and they stepped in quite early on. Possibly should have been sooner, but they stepped in to sort of give us some legal advice on what it meant for our contracts, because as they are fixed term contracts. Technically, making changes is obviously breach of that contract. But if you asked every single player in world rugby, would you be prepared to take a pay cut in order for the club to survive? Of course, everyone would. There's no one in this world that wouldn't. But we still need to understand what these things mean. So the RPA have been fantastic at outlining what it all means. We also, a group of us as senior players, have been in regular contact with the club's owners, with Jason and Colin, and they've been fantastic. And on Michael's point, just a few minutes back, I know that Jason and Colin are very seriously reflecting on how the business is run and how the Premiership as a whole should reinvent itself in a way that it's protected from. Hopefully, obviously, we never come across issues like this in the future, but how dependent it is on things like the TV money coming in, which has very much been on pause, obviously, since fixtures have stopped. So what's really pleasing is how open and honest the owners have been, the dialogue that we're able to have with them as senior players, and to work through some of the issues from a legal standpoint that we've been exposed to as players. And I genuinely think when all this is said and done, we will emerge from it in a better place. And the relationships that we're starting to build by working together can only be a positive thing for the future. We then obviously had the furlough scheme came in, and all of us as players are currently furloughed. So we're all at home. Clearly, we're not allowed into the club to train, and actually Sixways at the minute is being used as a testing site for key workers. So we're obviously staying well clear. In saying that, we have been sent training programs that are, of course, optional as we're furloughed for us to follow, but the information is there should we wish to do so, which you'd be pretty foolish not to do, because certainly some of the shapes and sizes of our guys, if they were to do a minimum of 6 weeks of nothing, then there'd be a lot of players converting from backs to forwards, and a lot of front rows converting from front row to coaches. So we can't really have that at this stage. So yeah, we're given the option. We're doing 3 running sessions a week on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're doing weight sessions 3 or 4 times a week, and we're doing sort of Zoom meeting style Pilates classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is quite a good laugh. And we're getting that interaction that I think we're all desperately missing of that changing room environment. So my sort of day personally, with a young family and a wife who I think is sick of me already, I'm basically getting up in the morning and getting out the door and getting my running sessions and my weight sessions done as early and as quickly as possible, so that when I get back in about 8:30 or 9:30, I'm sort of a bit more useful, shall we say, around the house and helping with the kids. Had a question previously from Rosie Hamilton of Bees Knees Marketing. Thank you, Rosie, for your question. Rosie asks, how does your rugby training enable you to stay motivated during the lockdown period? And I guess the simple answer to that is it still kind of gives me a bit of a purpose. Like I say, I'm up and out in the morning and I'm getting it done as quickly as possible. But there is a strong expectation, or certainly a strong will, for us to finish the season. Quite how that's going to happen, I honestly don't know. And seeing other leagues cancelling or calling off fixtures for this year, I'd imagine we're probably going to follow suit fairly quickly. But as things stand, all we can do is try and get ready as and when we are called up and told, right, it's time to come back to training, it's time to play again in the safest way possible. So I need to be ready to go for that. And if not ready to go for that, then ready to go when pre-season starts. And there's no point in turning up to a pre-season out of shape. So very much motivated to be ready to go when I'm called upon. It also puts me in a better place mentally. I feel more able to kind of, as I say, positively contribute towards the day with two young kids. Because as soon as I'm done training and I'm showered, it's school starts, and I didn't at any point sort of imagine I would be a teacher. And I think evidence suggests that was probably a wise career move, because I've been accused of being the worst teacher in the world on more than one occasion this last few weeks. But I'm trying my best, and my daughter, who's 6, and my son, who's 3, have taken everything sort of in their stride. They've been fantastic, probably better than myself and my wife, if I'm honest. We then sort of try and get out around lunchtime, burn off some energy, and then by the time we get back in, have some food. I'm up on the computer and I'm studying currently, so using the time to get some work done. I'm going to be a qualified residential surveyor in about a year's time, which is fantastic. Starting to look towards that life after rugby. And then I think probably my favourite part of the day is we're on the home straight of dinner, bath and bed. But sitting down as a family together every evening around 5 o'clock for our evening meal isn't something we necessarily got to do before, and it's not something maybe we cherish as much as we should. So we're really enjoying that. And just to sort of summarise, obviously it's incredibly uncertain times for everybody in the world, but all I can do as a player, all we're doing as Warriors, is being ready to go when the time is right. It's obviously an incredibly complex thing, returning to work for everyone, but especially when you spend half your time sort of under someone else's armpit on a pitch. It's not a particularly clean environment to be in. So there's a lot of things we need to work around. There's a lot of conversations at the minute within for senior players with the Rugby Players Association and Premiership Rugby, and of course the owners. So I think from my perspective, I'm going to try as much as possible to enjoy this time with my family. Realistically, I won't get this opportunity again. So I'll try and take it. I'll try and stay fit, keep working on my life after rugby. And when the time is right, we'll be ready to crack on and get going. And I hope that everyone else on this call stays well. I hope all of you are maybe doing some extra stuff that you hadn't done previously. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you when rugby does start, whenever that may be. So thank you very much for having me on.
Chris, thank you very much. We're just going to move on to quite a brief sort of Q&A session. So there are a couple of questions that weren't already put to the panel that have been submitted. And I've unmuted all of the panel, and I'd like each one of you to sort of contribute and share an answer. So the first one is from Elizabeth Armstrong from MFG Solicitors. And she asks, what is your biggest achievement since lockdown? Alice, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. I think it's a team thing, actually. Obviously, when this happened, we had to obviously fairly rapidly move everyone to home working. And I must admit, I built the practice with that thought process in mind, that we always wanted that flexibility of being able to work from anywhere. And then, of course, we were forced into using it. And on the whole, it's gone incredibly well. And the whole team have really pulled together and stepped up. And it touches on what Michael said. You know, it is so encouraging and so nice to see a team really get behind each other and support each other in unprecedented times.
That's great, Michael.
I just remember, Jack, a quote from Churchill who said once, "Never waste a good crisis." So after the initial week and few days of sitting down and thinking about what it's all going to be, we've actively taken the opportunity to work on the business through doing extra marketing, doing extra social media stuff, doing a number of webinars, talking to as many people as we possibly can, albeit from the middle of the Worcestershire countryside. And that's gone better than I thought. And there's been some business opportunities that have come out of that. That's been good. So in a bizarre way, it's been good to have this time just to focus inwards and use that time. So hopefully, if the crisis can end anytime soon, we've had a good crisis. So Churchill will be proud.
That's good. And Chris, finally you.
I guess in a way similar to the other two gentlemen in that obviously I'm not sort of inwardly looking at a business, but looking at myself and thinking about what life is going to look like post rugby. So yeah, it's trying to use the time as best as possible to prepare myself for that, whilst maintaining that level of fitness. I think just to sort of really hone in on Elizabeth's question, I think my biggest achievement, if I'm honest, is getting my son to write his name, which was a real effort, but we got there, and I genuinely couldn't be happier. So that's probably my biggest achievement, I'd say, and siliconing the shower tray yesterday, which was a big deal as well.
Thank you. I've got sort of one question sort of from myself, again to all three, if you could sum up very sort of short and sort of concisely. What one piece of advice would you give to everyone, both from something you've learned professionally or possibly sort of personally? I know Chris might have just covered that in terms of his son.
I think the one thing that I've stuck to with this, and I encourage everyone else to, is to stay positive. You know, we will get through this, and there will be some great opportunities to come out the other side of it.
The best piece of advice I've ever had in my career, and I continue to operate it today, is count to 10. I normally get to 4.5, but count to 10 is probably not a bad one.
Chris?
Yeah, I think also just on the back of that is accepting that people are going to get frustrated in these times, and it's okay to get frustrated. But as Michael just alluded to, take that minute, take that time just to sort of sit back and reflect, and also use the opportunity of this time to try something different, to try and expand your own personal development slightly as well, I'd say.
That's great. Thank you for your answers, and thank you all three for your contributions. I'll hand over to Neil just to know that he is involved and he isn't just hiding somewhere.
Hi guys and girls. Well, first of all, I must thank you all for staying connected today. I do hope it was both informative, entertaining, and I firstly would like to thank Alistair Wright, Alistair Hayward, right, we get the name right, and his team at Hayward Wright Accountancy Group for sponsoring today's lunch. It's a pioneering event that we've put together in a very, very short time. We know we've got to tweak a few things, but I think we'll get there. I must also thank Michael Doolin of Clover HR for his contribution. He's also one of our patron members of our luncheon clubs. And last but not least, Chris, you are a rugby legend within the Worcestershire area. Nobody knows you anywhere else in the country, but in Worcestershire, you're absolutely a legend. And it's nice to see how professional sports people, you know, in a short period of time, know what they're doing with their lives. We come to a little draw, a little quiz for the best question that we've had today. Wasn't an awful lot to choose between them all. but we've drawn one out at random, and that goes to Gareth Wilcox. So Gareth, after the event, can you email me your preference, red or white, and the delivery address so we can get it delivered to you before the next lunch?
Thanks very much. Cheers. Absolutely.
See, you get something. So it'd be nice for that to happen. And so, I mean, my view is let's have a relaxing Friday afternoon. Jack Courtry, I threw this upon him, and because of my IT skills are absolutely fantastic, I realised I couldn't do this on my own. So Jack Courtry, thank you very much for putting this together, hosting it. I think you've done a fantastic job, and thank you very much indeed. Everybody who's out there, thank you for connecting. We're encouraging your feedback to help us, tweak and improve what we're delivering here.